So today I am going to talk about basically what I think has been going through my mind in the last little bit, maybe always, honestly, um, which is that I'm not good enough. I've heard about I've heard this talked about before as as perfectionism, but my mind immediately rejects the idea of perfectionism because I don't think ever get I'm not perfect at anything. I'm not even sure I'm trying to be perfect at anything. I just am aware all of the time that I'm not good enough. And I think I want to talk about this today because I'm trying to understand like where this originally came from for me and what it's about. And it occurred to me recently that I am not at all sure that this came from someone else. I don't think that my efforts were ever really criticized growing up. I don't think that I had a lot of people telling me that no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. It's something that's coming from inside of me. It's a comparison that I make to something that's not real, to some idea of some perfect person that doesn't exist, but that I measure myself against all of the time. And I really just fail, I guess. I mean, constantly in my mind. It doesn't seem to really matter what it is that I accomplish or what it is that I achieve or what it is that I've done. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And it kind of I'm recognizing now it's never going to be good enough. Like, if I continue with the current way in which I look at things, it's just never going to be good enough. And I wish I understood more. And I want to kind of get to the bottom of or kind of get to understanding or thinking about why that's the case because I don't think I'm alone in this. There's a lot of information out there currently about perfectionism. I also think that it's related to anxiety, and it's also there's a lot of judgment that comes with it, like a lot of judgment. So I am someone who has a lot of experiences of social anxiety, but I don't think that if you met me in a social situation, you would have any idea that that is the case. I don't think I let on, to be perfectly honest, that that's how I'm feeling. The way I would say that my friends probably get alerted to the fact that I experience that is that if I get invited to a group and if it's a big group and I don't know a lot of people, I don't really typically want to go. And I think it's just a lot of energy all in one place. I have kind of a hard time sorting it out. There's less of an opportunity for like a real deep conversation or actually getting to know somebody. So I just kind of observe more. And when I look around, the one thing that I seem to be pretty confident about, no matter where I go, is that, I'm just kind of not good enough. I'm not really measuring up. It seems like there's just this way in which other people function or know how to function or know how to do things that it just doesn't, I don't. It kind of is elusive to me in a strange way. I don't seem to understand what the rules are, or if there are rules, or how everybody knew what they were, but I didn't know what they were. And so that isn't like the easiest place to try to be social in. And I know that more and more, and especially in our younger generation now, anxiety is a really consistent state, a really consistent feeling. It's kind of like always there, and it's so difficult to get out from underneath it. And it's a heavy thing. And for me, it just boils down to, I'm just not good enough. I'm not going to do the right thing or say the right thing or know, or if people really knew me, or like if they really understood, or if they saw like the state of oh my gosh, just list it, car, bedroom, bathroom. I don't know. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Interestingly, I do not have that same judgment towards what other people do, especially if they're doing it for me. I only really have that towards myself. I'm not good enough really applies to me. When I look at other people, my assumptions of them are generous. I generally think that most people are doing the best they can with what it is that they know right now. And I usually I usually don't have a lot of really negative assumptions about other people, which leads me to believe that maybe most of the time people don't actually have very negative assumptions about us either. So the negativity, certainly there are times where it's coming from outside of us. I've definitely been treated poorly or told mean things or talked about behind my back or misunderstood. But that's not the like mass majority of the time. It's usually it's usually not. That's just my experience. But this whole idea of I'm not good enough, I realize that it has been it has kind of been the messaging that's kept me in a lot of ways okay with staying small, okay with staying safe. Well, I can't go do something bigger or something more radical or something really challenging or something I really, really want to do because I don't have all of these other things you're supposed to have figured out, right? Like, okay, well, how can you know, I don't know, go back to school if I really can't keep my fridge cleaned out all the time? Because I need to be able to, have the fridge cleaned out appropriately before I can go do these other things. Otherwise, I'm a fraud. Maybe this is just me. I don't know. But I'm really hard on myself. Also, I don't clean out the fridge that often at all. I should do it more. I feel like I know I should do it too, and I still don't do it. And then sometimes I'm like, then I sometimes do, and I have to like get rid of a lot. And then I feel bad because a better person would clean their fridge more often. They would. They would clean their fridge more often. They would understand that it's an important thing and that you have to do it. And I am not a better person, and so it just goes too long. And it's that's everything though. Like that's everything for me. I don't know what this better person is that lives in my brain or where I came up with it or it's not real. It's not like a real person. It can occasionally be like a mythological person, but my boyfriend well, it was a while ago, but he kind of said, "Who what is this person that you're always like who is it that you think you're comparing yourself to?" He's like, "It's not even one person, it's some aggregate of all of these different people that are nothing like you. There's not a really appropriate basis for comparison." And I really think that I've let it hold me back a lot in my life. I was having this conversation, I think it was 2 days ago with my son who is in his senior year of high school. He has never liked school. It's always been a challenge pretty much ever since he started middle school, which is right around like 13 here. Um, he hasn't he hasn't felt comfortable. It isn't that the material is necessarily too difficult for him, but he feels a huge amount of anxiety and I'm not good enough and I don't belong and I don't like it here when he's at school. So it's been a really significant challenge. And developed he has a little bit of this medical condition too that has made it even more challenging. And he was really down and he's feeling a lot of panic and a lot of stress because he really has to kind of, really keep on it here at the very end to just do these last little things, get all of these classes passed and done so that he can graduate from high school and move on. And I've been in that place before where you're right at the end of this like really, really hard thing and you have this massive, overwhelming feeling of not being good enough. And you're like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't think I'm good enough to do this. The thing is that most of it just requires showing up. If he is able to get this done, if he shows up, if he gets to walk across the stage, if he gets to graduate, if he gets to do all of those things, you know, I want him to then understand that whether that happened or not, he was always good enough. But I'm struggling to figure out how to convey that to him because I'm struggling with it. I'm struggling with it. The minute that I experience the end of something that I've worked hard at or an accomplishment, it's difficult for me to think that I always have the ability to do it. The timing can shift, sometimes it takes us longer, sometimes we're faster, but that we can do it. So I was talking to him about this, and it occurred to me that him, how I feel about him is that it doesn't actually matter what he does. Who he is more significant. Who he is more significant. And who he is pretty spectacular. He's an extremely big-hearted, caring, kind, loving, amazing person. And I realized that there's been this oppressive, constant noise that what you do and what you achieve, and maybe even sometimes what you have and what you have to show for matters more, I think, than who you are. And I think that's why it just feels like, we're never good enough. We're never good enough. And that made me feel sad because I could tell that I'm trying to convey to him that I am proud of him, right? I am proud of him regardless of what the timeline of this is for him. I'm not sure he believes me, to be perfectly honest. I'm not sure if he does. I have to pause this because this has made me really emotional. Okay, I think I've pulled it together a little bit. So, anytime I talk about my children, I realize that, I don't really have any warning. The floodgates could kind of open. But the point is here I am trying to help someone who I deeply love and deeply care about and deeply know. I've been with him his entire life, literally. And I'm watching him feel pain. I'm watching him feel like he's not good enough. I'm watching him feel feelings of anxiety and fear and not sure how he belongs or if he even wants to belong with some of the people who surround him. And in high school, in these settings, and sometimes it's the same for us at work, we don't really get to choose who we're spending a lot of time with because we're kind of just put together with people. We're lumped together with people. And it's easy to say, well, just ignore people that, aren't kind or generous or aren't making you feel good or aren't included. But the problem is that, sometimes we don't have a choice about who is in our proximity. But it's so easy to not feel good about ourselves. And and I think that probably for this younger generation, social media may be compounding that just because even though we understand that it isn't all real or that it isn't an accurate portrayal of what everything looks like, we don't always see the edits. We don't always see all the cuts. We don't always see, like, if you panned to this side, everything's a mess. We don't really see that. But, I think that our brains, which are very tied to what we see, are very tied to our reticular activating systems. We don't always have the ability to kind of like intellectually override what is being kind of presented to us all of the time. And so looking around, it's easy to see what people do. It's harder to see who they are. And so we make a lot of judgments about ourselves and sometimes judgments about other people, but a lot of judgments about ourselves because it's easy to think that we just don't measure up, that we're not good enough. And maybe in some ways we think we measure up. Maybe it's like, well, in this area, I think I'm doing okay in comparison. But, I noticed that for me, it doesn't really matter because the minute that I think that, okay, well, it looks like, if you have this or if you do this or if you've achieved this or I don't know. Then, I'm gonna feel good about myself. I'm gonna feel like I'm good enough. I haven't really experienced that to be the case. The accomplishments in my life, the things that I have achieved, they haven't really brought me a lasting sense of being good enough. When I really think about what has moved the needle for me and trying to really settle into this place of I'm good enough, it's really getting comfortable with the idea that I am good enough just by existing, just by being here. But what that means is that I have to get really connected to what is uniquely me. Because if I am good enough, if I matter just by my existence, that means that there's something about me that's unique enough that me being here on this planet matters. And I think everybody matters. I think everybody's existence here on this planet matters. And I think that that is the very, very basis of why we so deeply crave the two most important things, which I think everything kind of comes back to, which is love and belonging. Everyone wants to feel loved and everyone wants to feel like they belong. Makes sense from like an evolutionary perspective, from an anthropological way of looking at things, which is, for a long time we've evolved to live in much smaller groups where we knew a lot of people. And being inside a tribe or a village or a community or a family provided some form of protection from external threats. At least it was supposed to. I mean, if everything was going mostly well, the worst thing that could happen is that you would be thrown out on your own, ostracized, or asked to do life alone. I think accidentally, though, right now, people feel alone. I think people feel like they're doing life alone. I think even sometimes when we're in a group, we feel like we're doing life alone. And so we don't ever feel good enough. We don't feel good enough to be loved and we don't feel good enough to belong. And, we're trying to figure it all out. And it's really, really hard. And I was so sincere, and I mean it with every bone in my body. What my son accomplishes or what he achieves, it doesn't matter. He's my son. That's all I ever need from him. And, if that's true for me as a parent about him, then I know that that has to be true about me in some capacity as well. It's always fascinating to me how, as we parent children, those of us who are parents, we learn a lot about ourselves. And we learn a lot about all of the things our parents said to us that were easy to discount, but that are absolutely true. And I wish that I had understood better that when my parents wanted to pour on love to me or tell me that they loved me or told me that they thought that I was good at things or that they were proud of me, that they were not pandering to me, they really meant it, you know? And so here I am trying to help, my son understand that he is absolutely good enough, regardless of the current circumstances that he finds himself in. And of course, at the same moment, I'm realizing I have some work to do on this too. It's come up for me a lot already with doing this, which is I should be better at it. I should be better at something that I haven't done before. I should have studied more or researched or figured it out, or I don't know. I should just be better at it. I should know how to do something that I haven't done before. And usually for me, that means, well, I should have gone into a deep study. But the truth is that for me, I do know that a lot of times I have to learn because I see the result of something and then I want to make it better. And that means that I have to be okay with whatever it was that my effort was in the beginning as a beginner. And that's a hard thing, especially if there's going to be anything public about it, anything public where you're a beginner. But I remember that most of the time we need to start something before we feel completely ready, to feel kind of ready. For me, I lay the groundwork for a long time, but it's usually around getting brave. It's usually around convincing myself that it's okay to do something and that I give myself permission, that the permission is going to come from me. It's not going to come from outside of me. So I'm responsible to myself and I'm responsible for the permission that I give myself. And there isn't anybody out there who really gives us a lot of permission to do a lot, like most of what we're doing, you know? It doesn't feel like that, but it's kind of true. I think when we were young, like here in the school system here, what I remember is that everything required the permission of an adult. You know, it couldn't leave the seat without permission. We couldn't talk without permission. We couldn't go to the bathroom without permission. You know, you had to line up and wait for bells and wait for things. And that makes a lot of sense. It's a good way to organize and keep people on track and get through lesson plans. And, but I think for me, I really got stuck in it. I really got stuck in waiting for someone to tell me what I was allowed to do and what the next thing to do was. So if I had an idea about something or I thought that maybe it would go, I could try it, I would kind of want to ask a lot of people's opinion. Well, what do you think I should do? Well, what do you think I should do? Well, what do you think I should do? And then I would kind of take that aggregate and I would use that for my decision making. But the truth is that it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks we should do. The only person who could know for sure is us. So if we're stuck in not feeling good enough, it's really hard to trust ourselves. You know, it's just this little bit of a spiral that we can get stuck in. So it's something I've been working on because I know for me that it's an area that I struggle with. Perfectionism in general, which again, I really reject the term perfectionism for myself because I am like, well, I'm not actually that good at anything, right? I'm not that perfect at anything. I know I can do things better than I do them, probably. A better person could do it better than I could. A more professional person, someone who has it more figured out, someone who understands it better or knows how to do it. This actually at times is true for me. So I have some ADHD characteristics, and so I have definitely found that there are certain types of tasks that I really don't do with any level of efficiency. It doesn't mean I'm not capable of figuring it out, but it will be done in the most efficient way that you could imagine. One of the areas for me that's particularly inefficient in my approach is cleaning things. Some things, when I get involved in cleaning them, it's hard for me to, like, for example, if I tell my boyfriend, like, "Yeah, I need to clean the bathroom," like, he doesn't understand that I've now committed the entire day to that. Also, I'm gonna need to clean out most of the drawers in my bedroom. I'll probably need to start sorting out the clothes in my closet, and I'm gonna inevitably end up in the family room looking at all of the family photo albums. If that's how cleaning the bathroom works. I don't know if it takes other people like 7.5 hours to clean the bathroom, but it just takes me that long. And you know, it gets really clean. Everything around it gets clean. It just starts to spread out like a flood. And at some point, I end up extremely exhausted by the entire thing. And, you know, I don't really want to sign up to do it again. So people are like, oh, I clean my bathroom like twice a week. I'm just like, how do you have the time? You know, God, it's like 14, 15 hours. I don't think I could do that. One time I had a friend, I still have the same friend who helps me with house cleaning. Um, as a single working, you know, mom with ADHD characteristics, it's one of my things I budget for. I know I am lucky that I can budget for it, and I do because it makes a huge difference in my life. I can go without fancy shoes or, you know, dinners out. I need help with this because it takes a long time for me to do it. I'm very inefficient at it. I watched her one time and she cleaned the whole bathroom. I happened to be standing there and we were talking, we were kind of catching up, and I watched her clean it. And I was extremely interested because she had like, I don't know, you know, I don't know what type of magic it is that she was born with, but she understood that you should like move things and start at the top and work your way down. I normally like, I'll do the floors and then the sink and then something else, and then the sink gets re-dirty and then the floors get re-dirty. I don't know. So I'm watching her and, you know, she's just doing, and I gotta tell you, I'm just amazed. I'm like, wow, you know, I'm impressed. I'm legitimately impressed. I'm not pandering. I was literally like, whoa, you know, she has like and I asked her, like, how did you learn to do this? how did you learn to do this?" And she was kind of like, "What do you mean? How did you know like the order to go in?" Maybe she watched someone, maybe her brain works differently than mine. I don't know, but she was it was amazing. And I appreciated so much that, she was just so organized. She's that way about everything too. She's just organized and she just knows what to do. And she just does it. And it does not take 7.5 hours. And she never once looked at any photo albums in my family room, which, I mean, probably saved some time. But I say that because I know I'm not good at it. I know I'm not good enough at it. And I actually decided that I don't care now. I don't care now. I am if I'm in a position where I can get help with something that is really challenging for me, that I feel a lot of shame about, that I just can't seem to do very efficiently, I've decided that now it makes more sense for me to ask for help with it. Um, And hopefully that means that I have more time to do things that I am good at. The same friend, there was a year where she needed some help with her taxes. I am in no means a tax professional, but I've been doing taxes for an incredibly long time. She asked me if I could help her. And I think at the time she was a little bit stuck and she was going to have to owe and she was frustrated. So I went and looked at it and kind of whipped through it all. I'm good at like weird number stuff like that and, finances and things. So I went through it and we figured out that, there was a way in which she could save a lot of money and she did. And then we were done. And I think it probably took me 2 hours. It was extremely easy. And I realized that, we all have different things that come more easily to us. I do not value at all that if you needed me to help you with your taxes, that I would be happy to do it. When my ex-husband was finishing his degree in accounting and in economics, he had this huge accounting final and he was stuck. And so I remember looking at it. I do not have a degree in accounting. I have taken a couple of accounting classes, but I nothing particularly challenging. But for some reason, I could read through it all and it made sense. Because for me, it was just rules that you follow. And it gave you this like very specific set of rules, and it either met the criteria or it didn't, and so you could do it or you couldn't do it. And I was like, oh great. And he was like, how did you figure that out? And I was like, wow, they told me the rules. So it's not that I'm not good at anything. It's not that I am terrible at a lot. I mean, I don't know. But I think I finally have figured out that I just have to kind of get over it, because if I measure myself harshly around my ability to efficiently clean things, particularly bathrooms, or I don't know, probably lots of stuff. And I don't really like like big, huge messes. Like I don't feel very good if things are super cluttered. So I need it to be nice, but it's always challenged me so much that it was just hard for me to get it there. So I felt a lot of shame and I felt a lot of guilt, because a better mom, you know, a better wife, a better person, would have known how to do it all. So then I'm not good enough. And I don't want to tell anyone that. I don't want you guys to know. You guys, I don't know if anyone listens to this. I don't want people to know that this is hard for me. But then I kind of wonder, well, why not? Like, what's so bad about it? Like, what was it about me being born that guaranteed that I would somehow know how to do this or be good at it or whatever? And by the way, I'm not kidding. I used to get books from the library. I was had no money, so the library was like my favorite place because they just let you walk out of there with stuff. And I liked books, so I could take as many as I wanted. It was amazing. But I would get books from the library about how to clean, like how to clean things, like how to clean your house. I would get books on everything, but I read a lot of cleaning books. It didn't really help me. I mean, the books were probably good, but my ability to execute it, like, it just still hasn't really, it just never really, I don't know. But, you know, I think that's the thing that's so interesting, is that how I feel about what I'm not good enough at. It's so much bigger than how I feel about what I am good enough at. If I can really convince myself that I'm good at stuff. And I've been trying to push myself because I realize that I'm not good enough. It shouldn't really exist in my brain, this idea, but it does, and it's loud. What should matter more is just I don't need to be good at a lot in order to be okay with me, you know? That's what I'm trying to find. That's what I'm trying to find as a resting place because I realize it's what's keeping me a lot of the time from being able to rest. Just this feeling of perfectionism, this feeling of disappointment that I'm not better. Why can't I be better? Why can't I be better? I don't need to be the best either. I don't have that thing where I'm not crazy competitive. I am a little competitive. Um, but I don't have to win. I like to play and I like to be part of things, but it is what it is. So I think that I think that when it's so funny, just my sister, who is this, beautiful, brilliant, um, amazing woman, who I've always admired, she has a lot of strengths in areas that are difficult for me. And one of them is, I'm not even kidding, but it's around like keeping things like neat and clean and tidy. I remember going to her house when she had really young kids, and she had three kids and they were pretty close together, and she was, holding it down, and she had help with nothing. And every time I would go, it was just like clean and organized. And like even her pantry, everything was like lined up in like rows. And she knew like what she had. And like I think one time she told me that she knew like how many t-shirts or socks or like sets of jeans her kids had. And I was like, what are you talking about? How could you possibly know this information? I didn't know you're supposed to know how many things people have that live in your house. And I guess she knew so that if they were missing, then she would look for them or something. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know how many, nope. And nothing's really lined up either in my pantry. It's if it fits in there and I can like stuff it in there. Sometimes I clean it out and then there's like less stuff. But then like this stuff fairy comes at night and then she just like puts things in there. And then when I open it the next day, I'm like, oh, the stuff fairy has been here and it's full of stuff. There's really nothing I can do. She's not as fun as like the tooth fairy, which, takes like your baby teeth and leaves you money. Like the stuff fairy is a little bit more frustrating. But she's real. She's absolutely real. And, whatever. I can blame her. But I remember being so impressed by what my sister had going on, and I honestly, like, I couldn't even talk to her about it because I was just so washed and shame, like, this is not I did a bad job, right? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the beauty and the peace and the orderliness of this house that you're raising your kids in, and I felt bad. I felt bad. I'm like, oh, I didn't do all of this as well, like, at all, and I don't know how she does it. We're very genetically similar. We have the same parents. We were raised in the same house, but there was something she, got that I did not. So I never talked to her about it because, well, I just felt bad. And I was just told her I thought it was amazing. So one day, and this is why it's so interesting how we perceive other people versus how we perceive ourselves. This is my sister. This is someone who I grew up with. This is someone who I've known. One of the people in the world who I would say I'm probably the closest to. I just have one sister. I have brothers, but just one sister. And I said, she was saying something about, yeah, she just got the last load of laundry folded. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so amazed by you. Like, it's just so incredible. I don't know how you do it. And she said something like, this is paraphrased, but she said something like, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you keep it together. And everything is like so nice and so tidy. And every time I come to your house, it's so beautiful. And you just have everything figured out. And she said, no, I have OCD. And I said, what? She's like, I have OCD. She says, if there is laundry in the dryer and it's not folded and put away, she said, I can't sleep. She's like, it's miserable. And I had no idea. I'm like, what are you what? Yeah. She's like, "It's crippling at times for me." She's like, you know, I think she even said, like, one of the kids wanted to play or they wanted to do something with her, and she said no, she couldn't do it until all of these things that needed to get done were done because she couldn't function. She legitimately has OCD. Um, and I felt, first of all, I realized how annoying assumptions are, right? I realized that all I really was worried about was myself. All I was really worried about was I'm just not good enough, and she is. I felt like a brat. I felt like, really, my sister is struggling with something and I didn't even notice. And I just realized, holy crap. Um, we don't ever really know. We don't ever really know what it is that's going on with anybody else. We really don't. And I felt bad. I realized that my own insecurities around this stuff, like my own feelings of not being good enough, just kept me from seeing something that was going on with her. And I felt kind of terrible. I really did. I had no idea. I had no idea. I don't, and not everybody whose house is perfectly clean all of the time is probably struggling with something as difficult as OCD. But I've never had a problem falling asleep at night, regardless of the state of my house. I really mean that. If there was a pile of unfolded laundry on one side of my bed, let's say it's in the middle of the bed, and I was really tired, I would push the clothes over to the side and I would crawl in and I would go to sleep. It would, yeah, I would have had no trouble sleeping. And I mean, that's happened. That's definitely happened. Um, and I realized, like, I was lucky, I was lucky. My ability to keep the constant laundry mountain done did not affect my ability to sleep. And I'm lucky for that. I am lucky for that. I know that because, a lot of the times, like, I would choose to go do something that seemed more fun than, like, probably what I should be doing at the time. And I realize now I wasn't crippled by that. I was hard on myself about it. One of my friends even bought me a sign that said something um, like, I don't know, something about moms, like good moms have like sticky floors and dirty ovens, but happy kids. And I loved it. I thought it was great because it did kind of remind me of myself. And I think when her husband saw it, he thought like she was going to offend me. I was like, I'm not offended at all. I never thought that like this was super great. For example, if you come to my house right now and you saw my yard and you saw my house, and it was like pretty nice, like things were tended or put away or like cute, or the yard looked really good. The thing you should know is that I have now I pay people. I pay people to help me. I like having the yard be nice, but if it was left up to me by myself, it would not look like that. And the more I was working as a single parent, the more I was struggling to keep up with everything that needed to get done. So when I was having a little bit more financial success, the only parts of my life that I expanded, like I don't live in a big house. I didn't get a bigger house. I don't have fancy things, but I did want, more help. I would like to feel like I have to take care of less. And I've been is like incredibly grateful for that. Every day that I drive home and I see that the yard is really nice, I did not make the yard nice. I paid to have the yard look nice, and it has been worth it. Some people like shoes, some people like purses, some people like gadgets, some people like, exotic five-star vacations. I just like knowing that there's other people that can help me keep things nice because it's not something I'm great at. And my neighbors probably appreciate it too. So I think that I'm learning, it's like 45 years into this like journey of being alive, and I'm like starting to figure a couple of little things out. And one of them is that I'm not good enough. Um, I think I realized that it's probably time to really start to object to the idea. What does my life look like if I decide that I am good enough? And I did have to do that with this. And the amount of stuff to overcome to say, all right, I'll start. All right, I'll just do it. All right, I'll turn the camera on. All right, I'll let, you know, I don't really feel like I'm not like I'm not a I I have parents who are, but I'm not. And so this is not comfortable. And I realize that that's kind of like not the point, you know? A lot of the times in life, I've recognized that really cool stuff starts to happen right on the other side of a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm playing with this idea of, well, what does it look like to say, well, maybe it's good enough. Maybe it's good enough. Maybe I'm good enough. Maybe it's okay. You know, again, there isn't really anyone out there making the rules. There isn't really anyone out there who is giving us permission or telling us what we can or can't do. I mean, hopefully not in most circumstances. I think a lot of times it's, and if you are an adult and you're in partnership with another adult and you guys have agreed that, you consult each other, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you are an adult and you're in a form of partnership, but you actually really don't have permission for yourself, um, it's like a different podcast, but I can tell you I have been there and it takes some work to get out of it, but it is necessary. Um, I'm going to put a pin in that. But if anyone who was listening to this just had something kind of go off in their brain, like, wait a minute, I actually don't have permission for my own life, you know, um, we'll come back to that. But for now, a lot of this is hard, right? This stuff is hard. And I don't know. I hope it gets easier. Maybe it does. I wonder if it gets easier if I just start saying, well, why not me? Why not me? Like, what level of good enough do I have to be before I just decide that, like, well, I could try? I don't know what will happen. I don't know what will happen. I really don't. But who cares? Who cares? You know, Everybody who has ever done anything really hard to get to something, to get through something. For me, that was finishing college. That was getting a bachelor's degree. That was something that I did right before I turned 40. I finally finished it. I had a head start too. I started college when I was 16. I had graduated from a high school early and I started college at 16 and I graduated right around 39. So, I mean, that's pretty, that was a long time, like the 3-year plan. I was not in school the whole time, but I was in school for a long time. Then I changed majors. Anyway, when I graduated, I felt really amazing about it for a couple of days. Like I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. It was a big deal. I felt like, oh my gosh, I accomplished this huge thing that had eluded me for so long that I never thought that I was going to be able to do. And then all of a sudden I could do it. And it was done. And you know what is so interesting is that the graduating part, once I had some perspective, I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't what mattered, you know? For example, if I had taken all but one class, I wouldn't have graduated. But all of the stuff that I learned in all of the other classes mattered just as much as whether or not I got the chink, you did it. So the journey, the learning, the process, all of that, that is actually what it is. It's not the thing that you get at the end. It's not the medal that you get because you ran the race. It's the running of the race that matters. And I think about that now because if I'm stuck in the I'm not good enough and I'm so not good enough that I can't even start, right? I can't do it right. I can't do it well enough. I can't do it perfectly and I know it. I know that. Then I won't start. And if I don't start, I never get the journey. And the journey is the good stuff, you know? If I run a race and I fall down and I don't do it right and I don't do it fast, and it sucks, but I did it. That's kind of all that really matters, you know? I try to tell my son that right now. Like for him, it's very challenging. He has, siblings who have not struggled with the exact same things that he has. And so I can tell at times he really feels left out. And the thing is, and this is just true, his journey has been so hard. Like his journey has been so hard. And, if he gets past it, the way it ended is going to be less important than the fact that he was able to do it. And it'll give him something to move forward into life with. But I just keep realizing that the way in which I can understand the world when I'm talking to someone else is suddenly the way that I need to understand the world when I'm talking to myself. And it's a lot harder. I believe it more when I'm telling somebody else. I believe it more in him. I see all of this. When I direct that back at myself, it's just so much more. It's challenging. I'm sure it's challenging for him to believe what I'm saying too, because it's always hardest to believe. So weird, but it's always hardest to believe good things about ourselves. And, you know, I'm really hoping that if I practice a lot, that it's going to get easier. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that if I just practice a lot, if I just keep starting, if I just keep doing it, even though I don't feel good enough, even though it's not going to be perfect, even though there will always be room for improvement, what I'm hoping is that I'm going to little by little by little, surprise myself, but also give myself a bunch of experiences and a bunch of journeys that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think that's kind of what it's all about. I really do. This last year has been like a really weird year. I had been planning to do this. I've been planning to do this now for a while. There's been a long ramp up to just like even getting myself to the place where I kind of had enough. It's taken me a while to work on my mental state to get to this place where I can do this. And a few months ago, it's been actually kind of a while ago now, but we found out that my mom has cancer. And anytime that word comes up, it's terrifying. And especially if it's a parent. And my mom has been healthy her entire life. I mean, I don't remember ever, she's never been unwell. I mean, honestly, she barely gets sick. She's got energy. You know, she's got more energy than me, but she always has. And she does do things incredibly well. I found that I was really surprised. I was really surprised that she has cancer. And so as we're trying to understand like what it is and like what this is all going to look like and how things are going to go, you know, one of the things she said was that there's just not anything she wants to change about her life. And that now moving forward, she just wants to spend more time with the people that she loves. And I realized that she really means it. That's absolutely sincere because when it comes down to, you have a lot less time to be here and you than you had originally anticipated. A lot of that stuff starts to kind of fall away. I don't think that you're ever going to look back and just wish, well, I wish I had done stuff better. And by stuff, I mean stuff, like cleaning things and doing things and that kind of stuff. But what we may look back and regret is how we treated ourselves, maybe how we treated other people. If we let the fact that we're not good enough keep us from opportunities, from journeys, from possibilities that otherwise we would have gotten. So basically experiences. I think we would regret that. I think that would be sad. I think that that would be the tragedy, you know? And so watching her navigate this with, of course, a huge amount of grace, but also it's been very emotional, has helped me to recognize that, you know, doing something, whether your first attempt at it was great or not, that matters a whole lot more than if you never did it because you just didn't think that you could be good enough at it. Good enough at it. Not good enough. I'm not good enough. And I realize more and more and more, and especially like watching her, but more and more and more and more that when I'm hard on myself, when I don't think I'm good enough, it's hard for anyone to believe me when I tell them that they are. Because again, people do not listen, they watch. They watch. They kind of mimic. We mimic. We don't really listen to people that much. I mean, maybe, but only if they're backing it up in action. If we've seen it, then maybe we'll listen to how they got there. But if they're just saying it, but we're not seeing it, we're not going to listen. So it's time, it's time for me to tackle this. It's time for me to stop letting limiting beliefs, resistance, uh, adversarialness, you know, difficulty. Everyone has like a different word for this, upper limit. But it's time for me to stop with the I'm not good enough and to keep it from crippling me and to not seeing what it is that maybe I'm great at, you know? Who knows? Maybe the forging ahead, even though we feel not good enough, is going to show us something that we didn't even know was there, that we never would have found if we hadn't have just like gotten out of our own way, gotten out of our own way. And you can't predict it. We don't know. We really don't. Most of the time, I see kind of one or two things happen with people. Either you're a lot like what you've seen happen before, like your dad was an amazing something, your mom was an amazing surgeon. Maybe you could become an amazing surgeon, right? Like maybe there's some of that that gets like handed down genetically, or it's going to be something totally different that no one's ever seen before. I have a family of people who can't hold a tune, and then one of them is a brilliant musician. Well, if you believed the idea that our family's not good enough at music because we can't hold a tune, we shouldn't even try. Well, then this person who was going to be brilliant, they wouldn't have known. The coolest thing about still being here as a human is that we're going to get another chance. We're going to get a chance to try something else. We're going to get a chance to change our minds. We're going to get a chance to be different if we want to be, look at things, look at them from a different perspective, and then look at them from a different perspective. Learn to trust ourselves, learn to love ourselves, learn to be okay. And that is a gift, you know? I don't think I always have recognized, well, I definitely have not always recognized, like what a gift it is to not know how long you have, but that's because we're in a little bit of like obliviousness, like, oh, I have time, I have time, I have time, I have time. I think the most precious resource that exists, period, the one thing I know for sure, is time. Time is the most precious resource that we have, greater than any other thing. It's the one thing that is running out. It's the one thing that every single day there's less of for everybody, regardless of who you are. We are all marching towards less time that we have. And I think I just want to start to play with the idea that maybe I am good enough to at least try, right? Maybe I'm good enough to start. Maybe I'm good enough to take the next step, pick up the phone, have that conversation, tell someone that I love them, go to a new place, open my heart or my home. Maybe. Because if not now, when? If not now, when? And it doesn't really matter ultimately where any of that takes us, because that's not the point. All that matters really is everything along the way. And I don't think you have to be good enough for that, right? Maybe you have to be good enough to finish a race, but you don't have to be good enough to start one. Are you missing out entirely on the experience if you run 3/4 of a 5K and then walk the last part rather than don't try until you can run the whole thing? I don't think so. Do as much as you can. You want to try again, you can try again. But the point is that I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, I can't do it. That has kept me small. That has definitely kept me small. I don't want to be an embarrassment to myself, to my family, to other people. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to make a fool of myself. But maybe there's actually some real value in that. Maybe, for example, maybe someone out there will listen to this and they have the potential and they are going to be like a brilliant podcaster or teacher or speaker or orator or whatever. But they don't feel ready and they don't feel good enough. And maybe they'll watch this and they'll say, well, she clearly did it anyway. So maybe I'll try. Right? That's the point. That's the point because people don't listen, they watch. You know? I feel like we should all go out there. I feel like and realize two things. One, we have every right to be anywhere we want to be. We do. And secondly, you don't have to be good enough. Why not you? You know? Why not? Could be bad at it, but if you do it, that's the part that matters. And you probably get better at it if you care and you want to. You know, and if you do it and you're like, oh, I hate it, I don't want to do it again. Okay, great. Now you know. And you can take that off of the ever present, constant, I should. Well, now you know you don't want to. Move on to something you do want. Move on to something that you do want. You know? So I think that's it for me today. I think that is kind of what I'm going to take and try to move forward with and give myself permission again to just be a beginner and to recognize that not being good enough isn't something I want to keep telling myself. I don't have to be good enough because I don't actually know what that means. I'm not exactly sure who measures. I don't know who it is that we're supposed to ask to find out. Um, so I think I'm gonna just not care, you know? Okay. Well, then I'm not. What now? Like, let's go get an iced coffee, right? And maybe not worry about it. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.